Okay, um, I'm going to return to a topic that I discuss from time to time, and I really ought to just put these in a playlist or something. But I'm sitting here thinking about it a lot, and this is something that has been on my mind often for a few weeks now, quite frankly. Um, the fact of the matter is, and I hate to admit it, I hate that it's true, but because of scheduling reasons primarily, I haven't really been training in either of my martial arts since I started my new job. Um, I work nights, that means I sleep during the day, and the weekends are my days off. Uh, and it just so happens that, like, all of the classes take place during the day on weekdays, which is when I'm trying to sleep. And it's pretty hard to work in a factory if you don't sleep. So I've been struggling to figure out how I'm going to keep training and get enough sleep to work and also be able to like lift weights, do all my chores around the house and cooking and all that. Um, I really need to figure it out and get back to it. But when I do, I've decided that I need to prioritize jujitsu as much as I don't like it. I do enjoy Muay Thai and boxing. I don't enjoy jujitsu, but for the purposes of self-defense skill set, um, it's kind of an obvious choice to me that I would want to prioritize the grappling side of things. Um, I would say that the number one reason why I like jujitsu less, or in fact just straight up don't like it at all, is because it feels impossible to get into. Um, there's an extremely high barrier of entry in terms of skill level where you're going to feel like the new guy on his first night for your first 3 or 4 years that you do jujitsu. You're just going to keep having that feeling every time. Like, that does not go away until you're already like a couple belts in. You start to feel like you halfway belong there. And it can be really demoralizing. It's hard to struggle through that. But if anything, that just lends more credence to the importance of it, um, because it is a high skill game. Uh, so, about striking. Striking is valuable, and you do want it in your skill set. Sorry, I need to like reposition my hand here. I'm shaking the phone as I speak. Um, striking is valuable, and you do want to know some things, but there comes a point. I feel like the skill sort of ramp or curve on striking functions in a very different way in that, like, the difference between an absolute beginner and like an intermediate is huge, but then the difference between an intermediate striker and someone who's a bit more advanced is not quite as massive. And like, okay, so my problem with it is if you're focusing on striking alone, your two options basically are pain compliance or a legit knockout. Um, and this may be, repeated leg kicks can take somebody out of a fight. Liver shots can take somebody out of a fight. Those are the pain compliance route. In a self-defense situation, it might not play out like that. You're not fighting per any rules. You don't know if somebody has a weapon. You don't know if they're drugged out and are not going to feel the pain. And also, they may try to take the fight to the ground. And then what do you do? Um, so pain compliance, I feel, is not particularly relevant to a self-defense scenario because you are assuming that your opponent is in fact sober, and also that their adrenaline is not affecting their ability to feel pain so much that they just don't. Um, I don't think that's something that you can count on, not remotely, and so I wouldn't prioritize it. I wouldn't see it as something necessarily valuable. It can be a tactic that can work, um, much in the same way that like a taser can work. It can, but are you gonna count on it though? Like, if if you've seen a lot of like body cam, badge cam, dash cam footage of taser deployments, it feels like a lot of the time it just doesn't do anything. Either because the guy is hopped up on something or just because the prongs don't make the proper contact that they need. Whatever the case may be, it seems so unreliable. And that's about how I feel about using pain compliance as a route of stopping a threat. It doesn't feel like something that should be a major concern or priority in your training. The other route, knocking somebody out, you would be shocked at how much abuse you can take before you get knocked out. Sometimes it's a one-shot drop. Most of the time it's not. Most of those one-shot drops are like a sucker punch that somebody isn't expecting. And so, they're kind of still in a somewhat relaxed posture, and then all of a sudden they're on the ground. That's one thing. But if you are already like actively in some kind of a physical engagement with somebody, you're not going to get that lucky usually. Um, Being knocked out is a function of your brain rattling around inside your skull. Your brain is not a muscle. You can't train that. So when you see like pro fighters just get their face completely fucking rearranged and yet they're still standing, that is pretty much the same for anybody. Like somebody might lose their composure, sure. It might be easier to get them to that point because they can't fight as well, sure. But the sheer amount of like physical damage someone can sustain without being knocked out is going to be about the same from person to person because it's about your brain inside your skull, like similar to being concussed. Like that's not something that you can't lift weights with your brain. And so when you see these guys getting their face all kinds of fucked up and yet they're still standing, take that as a sign. Like it's not easy to knock somebody out. Like I said, if you get a surprise sucker punch, that's one thing. Which, by the way, if you are doing that, then I have to wonder, like, were you justified in the first place? Like, really shouldn't go around doing that to people, generally speaking. Maybe there's situations where it's legitimate, but usually I would say, like, that's a red flag for me. If somebody's telling a story and that's how the story ends, like, seems a little shaky in terms of moral and legal justification for that. Anyways, that's about it. Um, you know, I feel like most of your striking training, which you should still do, but I feel like for the most part, it should be about fundamentals and especially defense. You want to know how to protect your head because you don't want to get knocked out. You want to know how to protect your body because you don't want to get, those liver shots that might take you out. You want to be able to like check a kick and especially like keep your stance. You don't want to be like falling over in the striking game as much as you can avoid it. But aside from that, like, I don't know that I would go for any kind of like high level techniques like spinning back kicks and shit like that. It takes a level of mastery to be able to pull those off without like totally exposing yourself to a counter or losing your footing and like falling over as a result or getting your kick caught, and then you can be swept and taken down, and then just like that you're into the ground game. If you're helpless on the ground, then I don't like your chances in a fight, period. Because the problem is with grappling, there's the opportunity to physically control someone. They don't have to be knocked out. They don't have to be in a lot of pain. But if they physically cannot do something, then that's just it. They can't do it. And so if you are being controlled like that and you have no knowledge of how to defend against that, prevent it, escape it, counter it, whatever, then you're done. Like that's it right there. You're kind of at their mercy at that point. And of course that's not even getting into like chokes or there are certain moves that can break a bone or, dislocate like a shoulder or something. And also the fact that like strength doesn't even give you that huge of an advantage. It definitely gives you an advantage, but if you are like pretty strong but you don't really know much about grappling, somebody smaller and weaker than you that is good at grappling probably still going to roll your ass, to be honest. Like, take for example an arm bar. If you don't know how to defend against an arm bar, probably your first instinct is to try to like pull your forearm up like a bicep curl, basically. The problem is your opponent is using every muscle in their body to crank that arm. Like, they're pulling on it with their upper body and their core, and they're also like kind of pushing or sort of pulling, it's hard to describe, with their lower body. Like, all the muscles in their legs, particularly their hamstrings and glutes, are also cranking your arm away from your body. And so, like, how much can you bicep curl? Can you bicep curl an adult human being? I kind of doubt it. And so, if that's like your best idea to get out of an arm bar, then you're fucked, because that's not going to work unless your opponent doesn't know what they're doing. So, shit like that, I think it's the best idea to prioritize grappling for like a self-defense conscious training program. And I mean, it's probably true for pro fighters too. Um, High level strikers can go a long way, but if they get taken to the ground and they're not particularly well versed there against an opponent who is, it's probably going to end the fight there a lot of the times. So definitely have both, but I'm thinking I want to prioritize grappling. As much as I fucking hate it, I really don't like it. It's not as fun to me, partly because of like the skill level thing where I just feel useless consistently and it feels like I'm never going to get any better, but also just like I don't like being all like entangled with somebody else. Like I'm a personal space kind of guy. And so I really don't like that. It's super uncomfortable for me. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, again, that's kind of just part of the problem. I don't like being there because it's not a good place to be in. And it would do good for me to know how to get out of that situation. Um, if I'm worried about somebody hurting me, like, the chances that they're going to do that by, like, knocking me out or something, again, if they land a surprise sucker punch or something, there's really nothing you can do about that, anyways. It doesn't matter how good of a striker you are. If your back is turned and you don't know that something is about to pop off and somebody just fucking comes right around you and throws a fucking haymaker to your chin, like, I don't give a shit if you're Conor McGregor or Mike Tyson or whatever. Like, if they catch you off guard, they catch you off guard, and that's kind of just it. So I feel like you really can't do much to account for that aside from, like, practicing your situational awareness and shit. But there's still the possibility that somebody can catch you off guard. Most of the time, I think the real danger comes from somebody choking you out or getting control of you to a point where, say, it's like a ground and pound situation where you're stuck on the bottom and you don't know how to sweep them, you don't know how to gain a sort of positional dominance for yourself, and so you're just kind of stuck there, just trying to defend your head against this rain of blows coming down on you until your opponent gets tired or the police show up or something. Like, that seems a lot more likely to me than like a long protracted fucking boxing match or something, um it's just a really scary feeling. Like, I think I've talked about this before, I've had times in a jiu-jitsu class where somebody was obviously way beyond my skill level and they just kept getting me in positions where I just had no control and I was completely at their mercy. And it was really uncomfortable for me to feel that feeling of helplessness. It's fucking scary because you can feel that like this person could just fucking kill you and there is nothing you could do about it. And you would be conscious and aware for the whole thing right up until the end. Um, and that fucking freaks me out. So I think all things considered, if you're just a beginner, like just starting to get into this stuff, and you're trying to figure out what's going to do the best for you, I would say go for grappling first, and foremost and prioritize it. Still do both, but the grappling game is chess and boxing is checkers. It's going to take you more time and more effort to get good at grappling, but it's also going to give you more reward for sure. Um, I don't really know that I have too much else to say. Going back to the point about strength, again, still do your conditioning, but also realize that if you're doing nothing but strength training, you're really setting yourself back, because you're going to be at a huge disadvantage if you happen to meet somebody who has that high level of grappling skill. The strength disparity there would have to be massive. Like they would have to be like 4'2" and 80 pounds and can barely lift a pencil for you to actually get the better of them based on your strength alone if they're a high level grappler. Like nobody's gonna like to hear that, but that's kind of the way it is. I'm exaggerating a bit. Um, I don't know if the size disparity has to be that big, but for real, like just having a little more grappling skill is better than having a lot more strength. Um, if you don't believe me, go to a jiu-jitsu school and, you know, if there's like an open mat night or something, ask one of the black belts to roll with you and see what they do, because you might end up feeling those feelings that I used to feel of just being manhandled and feeling like a toy in the hands of a fucking predator animal. Um, yeah, I think that's about all I got to say. I know not everybody's gonna disagree, and shit, I can't talk. Not everybody's gonna agree. Not everybody's gonna like to hear it. But you know, I've been training on and off since 2021. I've watched a lot of like professional fights, amateur shit, like shit happening in the streets. I heard a lot of fucking stories, and from everything I'm hearing, it seems like a pretty consistent conclusion to me that I think I should be prioritizing grappling more, and I should just get over the fact that I fucking hate it. And maybe if I just fucking keep up with it consistently for a while, I'll get a little bit better and I'll hate it a little less, hopefully.